Welcome to Bandit's Keep. I'm Daniel. Today I want to talk about adding procedures to non-procedural D&D, I guess is the best way to say it. This comes from a question I had on my procedural D&D video. The person asked, what if you're playing something like 5e, which doesn't have these kind of procedures and it's a little bit more individual initiative based? Like, how do we use these kind of old school procedures? Now, when I'm talking about procedures, you can check the video. I'll put a link in the description. I'm talking about exploration and, to a lesser extent, combat. I'm assuming they weren't talking as much about combat procedures in this case. That is to say that if you look at a game like 5th edition, and I don't know if they've added things in 5.5, let me know in the comments below, but there's not really rules. Like, there's some rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide about how fast you can move through a dungeon, which, in my opinion, is way faster than you should be able to, but that's besides the point. But they don't really talk about how long it takes, let's say, to listen at a door, to pick a lock, to do any number of things, fill your sack with gold, right? How long do these things take? They don't really give you rules for that. And I think that sometimes that makes people ignore that those things take time, which means that time seems to go by incredibly slowly in the game, like actual game time, because you're doing everything in one move, if you will, or one turn in 5e case, meaning like one round, right? So let's just get some terms straight because we're going to be tripping over them otherwise. In old school D&D, a turn is a unit of measurement when you're not in combat. A turn is when you're exploring through the dungeon. A turn would be 10 minutes. A turn in the wilderness is 1 day. Okay? So in 5e, we don't really have that. We just have rounds. And the term turn is used as in your turn around the table. Like it's your turn to attack, right? So just keep in mind that not to get those terms messed up. When I'm talking about turn here, I'm talking about an old school exploration turn. So in OD&D, for instance, Original Dungeons & Dragons, an exploration turn is 10 minutes. A combat round is 1 minute. So it turns about 10 times, right? So if we look at a round, which I believe is 10 seconds in 5th edition, you could make an exploration turn 100 seconds or 2 minutes, basically, which is probably a good speed. I think that 10 minutes might seem really long to a lot of people when you're talking about, when you're looking at old school games. So if you want to keep things, you've been playing and not using these procedures, 2 minutes might be fine. Like people might actually buy into that a little easier than they do 10 minutes. Because people are going to say, really, it took me 10 minutes to walk down the hallway? So you got to work with that, right? If you're starting with a brand new group who's never done any of this stuff and you just want to jump into it and they're on board, then I would just go with 10 minutes because it works. Why 10 minutes? Because you want time to pass in the dungeon. You also want it to feel like they're moving slowly. You're not walking down the hallways of your high school after hours, with clean floors and doors over here, and maybe the lights aren't on except for some, exit sign lights, and you have a flashlight or a torch in the case of D&D, or a torch, I guess, in some places where they call flashlights torches. Anyways, you're walking through a dungeon, right? There's rubble on the floor. There could be traps. So you're looking at the walls to make sure there's no holes where arrows might shoot out. There might be giant spiders on the ceiling, right? You're paying attention. You're going forward with your spear or a torch. So you're moving slowly. So if you want to think about it like that, you could say, well, okay, if a turn is, let's say your movement in 5th edition is 30 feet in a round, 10 seconds if you're in combat, maybe it's 30 feet in 2 minutes. That kind of works a little better. But most dungeon areas are going to be difficult terrain. So now you're moving half that speed. So you're moving 30 feet in 4 minutes. I think that kind of works out a little bit better for me. Like I'd probably use that math if you want to care about how long a turn is. However, I might say that if you're not really overly tracking time, you're not super worried about it. I mean, the main reason to track time, of course, is for spells. Then you might just say to yourself, a turn is a unit that we use while exploring. And you can do a reasonable thing in a turn. That is to say, you can search a wall, a wall for secret doors in a turn. You could listen at a door. Now, you just have to listen at a door for an extended period of time. Well, if you're listening at a door, you want to listen for a while, right? You don't want to just put your ear to the door and go, nope, don't hear anything and go. You want to listen and make sure nothing's moving in there. Is something coming in the room? Is somebody just making very quiet noises? Everybody's got to stay still, right? So that could take some time. Picking the lock, if you're trying to do it quietly, you've taken your bag out, you're taking all your accessories out, you're laying them out, you got a torch. It might take 2, 3, 4 minutes to pick a lock. Who knows, right? And this is how we want to kind of do it. Maybe you can do multiple things in a turn. So the way I would handle this is I would figure out how you want to handle the turn. I think that's going to be the trickiest part. And then you've got to get your players, I guess you should do this before you do any of this, on board that they're going to act as a unit until they don't need to. That is to say, if they're going down a hallway, just a standard hallway, and they're exploring, you can set your marching order, you set a basic parameter, somebody's looking for traps, somebody's watching the rear, somebody's holding the torch, and then you just kind of move through. Okay, you move 30 feet, you move 60 feet, you move 90 feet, you come to a T section. Okay, you want to stand here and listen for a turn? Okay, you're listening. Okay, to the right you hear waterfall, to the left you hear nothing, absolute silence. But you don't see any doors in either direction, they're just open hallways. Which way do you want to go? All right, how many turns have gone by? Right? That's fast at the table, but maybe that's 20 minutes, 30 minutes in play. Now maybe you roll a wandering monster, or maybe you roll every turn, depending on the dungeon you're in. And you're going to kind of work your way like this, right? And the reason why I say to do it like this is because if you're going to take an individualized system and make people operate as a group, you don't want to linger on it, right? Because you don't want people sitting there waiting while one person is just making all the decisions for the group. You got to kind of just keep the flow going. Now, you're walking down the hallway and you're like, okay, you go down 20 feet, 30 feet, whatever it is, 40 feet. You come to the T section, and then the rogue steps up and says, you know what, you guys stay here. I'm going to stealth down to the right while you listen to the left. Well, now they can still make their individual turn, right? They don't have to, say I'm using turn again, they don't have to be part of the unit all the time. When it comes to a decision point, people can do different things. You come into a room, okay, 2 of us are going to watch this door, 2 of us are going to listen at that door, 3 of us are going to loot the treasure chest. Oh, hold on, before we loot the treasure chest, take some time looking for a trap. Let's get the rogue over here. Okay, now while that's happening, you as a GM are going to go, okay, well, if you're going to check for traps, let's say that's going to take 2 or 3 minutes. You roll whatever, they don't find it, or let's say there is a trap. There's a trap. Okay, you're going to disarm the trap. That's going to take another few minutes, and you're kind of taking away time here. So let's say that all in all, it's taking 15 minutes to do all this stuff. And you just let them know that. And again, you can just kind of sweep through, but make sure things take time. Because time is one of the few resources that you can't like wash away with high-level spells, right? You can get food, you can get healing, you can get light, but time you really can't get back. So that's the resource that we can really double down on when we're talking about using dungeon procedures to make a dungeon crawl go smoothly even in a game without procedures. Okay, so I'm going to just, because I probably was talking really fast and just kind of giving some more theoretical, I'm going to walk through a very basic scenario, just theater of the mind, just really simple. Let's say we have 3 characters. We got a rogue, we got a cleric, we got a wizard, okay? The cleric's heavily armored. They're going to be the main like fighter in the group. The rogue obviously is your sneaky, and your wizard is going to be, let's say, in the back. A typical setup, right? Let's say that our wizard is going to carry our torch, because the rogue doesn't want to have a torch on them because they might want to sneak away into the shadows, right? And the cleric doesn't want to have a torch because they're holding a shield in their weapon, right? So the wizard's got a torch in their hand, ready to cast spells with their other hand. Our rogue is basically in the middle to start with as we're kind of moving down the dungeon. Now, why is the rogue in the middle? That's a whole other video. But we're moving down the dungeon 30 feet, 60 feet, 90 feet. Okay, so, and I'm saying turns are 2 minutes, and I'm going to check for a wandering monster every 5 turns, so every 10 minutes. So now I've gone 6 minutes, right? So we wait at the corner. All right, we're going to listen to see what happens, or at the T intersection, rather. The rogue says, I'm going to stealth off in one direction. I'm just going to put my hand against the wall, because they're all humans for some reason. I put my hand against the wall, and I'm going to move away from the party, and I'm just going to move further down and see if I can hear something further down in the darkness. Okay, we're rolling for stealth for the rogue. They move off into the darkness. That's going to take a turn for them to move. Now, not only are they, and I know there's no necessarily penalty for moving in stealth in 5e, but we are moving on rough terrain. They are going in the dark, so maybe I'm going to say you're going to have to move at half speed if you want to go slow, if you want to be stealthy. Okay, cool. They're moving down, so they say, well, all right, well, we're going to go down for 2 turns so I can get far enough away so I can actually hear anything down there, and I'm away from the torchlight. Cool. They start to move that direction. The other group of the party is standing there. They listen. By the time the rogue gets to their final destination where they want to stop and listen, Now it's time to roll a wandering monster, right? We're on our 5th turn. We roll, we get one. Now we can determine, where is this thing coming from? Is it coming from behind them? It's been tracking them the whole time. Is it coming from the dark where the rogue is now by themselves? Is it coming from the other end where the cleric and magic user have been listening? And if that's the case, did they hear it? The rogue probably maybe not as much because they were moving in the dark, trying not to make any noise. I'm going to use their passive perception. The magic user or wizard, as it would be in cleric, we can use an actual active perception check, right, to see if they hear anything. But we can also just determine whether or not this monster is is trying to be quiet, right? Maybe it's not. But remember, our wizard and our cleric are standing there with a torch, right? They are a target. What happens? This is where we kind of work together and create the story. All of this comes together pretty simply, and I'm just keeping track of what everybody's doing. Each turn, they're doing something, and I'm checking for my wandering monsters as appropriate, and when I do, we're figuring out where they can be and what the situation might be. I'm using the tools of my individual system, my stealth checks, my perception, to adjudicate, right? Where I might use surprise and or maybe moving silently if you have a thief in BX to figure out the rest of it, right? So system is really just different ways to do the same thing. The procedure is the same. At the beginning of a turn, however long the turn is, the party either moves or does something, or moves a little bit and does something. Different people in the party can do different things if you're in an area like a room, but all of this is stated up front. And I think this is what keeps things simple. It takes a little while to get used to if you're used to a standard table, but what I've found is the simplest way to handle any of these things and to make it feel, I hate to use this word, but realistic, is to have each person at the table at the beginning of each turn, assuming they're not just moving as a party, just say in a few words what they're doing. What are you doing? I'm checking the statue. What are you doing? I'm guarding the door. What are you doing? I'm listening at that other door. What are you doing? I'm also going to guard. What are you doing? I'm going to stand back from the statue and just watch to see if it does anything when they're messing with it, right? Once everybody says what they're doing, we throw dice, then the story is explained, right? What happens? Did a wandering monster come? Did you hear something? Did the statue do anything? Were you ready because you were on guard? Are there rules for this? Holding actions and all stuff? Use them. If there's not, use your best judgment. Either way, the idea of having a bit of a procedure, while it can, on some level, break the I only speak in character type immersion, it does make the game easier to run. And I feel like, for me anyways, it helps me focus more on the creativity of the game and less on the mechanics, because I always know each time what the mechanics are and how I'm going to use them. At the beginning of each turn, the players say what they're doing. Once everybody has said what they're doing, we roll dice to figure out what the effects are of what they did and what the world is doing. If we get into combat, we use the combat rules. Simple as that. And I'll finish off too by saying, because I don't think I mentioned this in the other video, this thing is also true for overland travel. If your party is moving across a map, they will state at the beginning of the day, I'm doing this. Normally, traveling, but they might say, we're going to travel slowly and forage. The thief might say, I'm moving faster than everybody else, so I'm actually going to leave earlier in the morning, so I'm going to try to stay like a couple of miles ahead of them so that I can make sure there's no trouble. And I'm going to move, by myself, so maybe I'm more stealthy and I might see something ahead of time. Cool. You can do all that. Everybody says what they're doing. Dice are rolled. That day, that turn, is adjudicated. Simple as that. So hopefully that was clear. That's how I would do it. I mean, I could break down, this is this step and how you translate it to this mechanic. This is this step and this is how you translate to this mechanic. But I feel like that's something that you're going to want to do at your table based on your own system, and every system is a little bit different. So I hope this kind of overview was helpful. Let me know in the comments below if you use procedures, whether you're running an old school game or you're running 5th edition or Pathfinder or anything else. I know that a lot of these kind of OSRE games have procedures. I'm sure things like Shadow Dark do. So, it's the same kind of thing. So if you're playing those games, it probably sounds familiar to you. There are a lot of stripped down games, though, I know, that skip these steps because they kind of, think that you would know how to do it. And I feel like that's where a video like this can be useful. So if you're playing a game that doesn't have any procedures and you've been a little bit kind of confused or you feel like it's a little clunky, let me know that as well, because maybe I can do more videos like this, being a little bit more specific to different game systems if you'd like. Either way, thanks for watching. Check the description. I will put a link to that video I talked about, and I'll talk to you soon.